There is a foundational premise for the gospel of God, which the world is in fundamental denial of. Not only is the secular world in denial of this premise, but every other major religion would deny this premise. And the rejection of this premise is the basis of the error of all false religion. And that premise is that man is dead in his sins, cut off from the light of God. Ignorance of, or dismissal of this fundamental premise constitutes the stumbling of all humanity, spiritually speaking. They do not perceive that the whole world lieth in wickedness. It is for this premise that Christ came into the world to give himself as a ransom for many. He himself is the propitiation for our sins, and not ours only, but also for those of the whole world. And yet, even the modern church is straying from this premise, upon which the very gospel of God is based, for which God sent his Son into the world, which is that he be the propitiation for sin. And this is the premise affirmed by all those elect of God, that Jesus Christ gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us from this present evil world, according to the will of God and our Father. If a man will have a light that is true, well, that light must sit upon this premise. And if it does not, then woe unto those who kindle fire from an alternative source, so as to walk by another principle, that is, another premise. They have generated sparks, that is, demonic help, that is not the help provided to us by our Creator. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. No man can come to God but through the agency of his Son, and that requires coming through the way that he has established for all sinners. Once justified by the blood of Christ, they may receive baptism into spiritual things, for only then do they walk within a covering for sin. But woe unto those who presume to pursue spiritual things absent this covering, lest they might actually be awakened to things that can only destroy them. And this is a very simple principle, one that harkens back to the fall of man in the garden, that man should be prevented from a life that would only serve to their eternal torment in the lake of fire. And therefore God said, Behold, the man has become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim, and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. But tragically, many are pressing in against God's purposes in appointing cherubim to guard against a life in the spirit that is alienated from God, to force themselves into realms denied them for their own protection, that they be not cast alive into the lake of fire with Satan. They choose to pursue spiritual things that does not include the sacrifice God provided as atonement for sin, or the way that God has made through the life of Christ in conformity to his cross as the only means by which God can communicate true grace. By neglecting this way, it would be good for them to remain dead, spiritually speaking, rather than to be activated and made alive in their fallen nature, without respect to God's provision for them. And we find that Satan is seeking to enliven many to a life that only serves to condemn them, a life outside of their covering in Jesus Christ, a sort of anti-life that breaks forth and thrives for only a very short time, until destruction. And in this way, demonic beings are given increasing access to humanity, to enter into the world, and to give final expression to their rebellion. How does this occur? Likely in a variety of ways, but this video will address two ways, namely, through mysticism, in this case the Eastern variety, and through mind-expanding drugs, so-called. While not directly related to the Seven Mountains Mandate, this principle is important for matters of discernment, as well as useful to an understanding of matters related to upcoming videos.
And this week, I'm going to be sharing a pretty awesome exercise. It's an exercise for awakening Kundalini energy. And what Kundalini energy is, it's a powerful force. It's a major and divine line of energy that runs up the base of your spine, all the way up and through the crown chakra. And it's thought of actually as a serpent who is sleeping right at the base of the spine, 3.5 times coiled around. And
Now, one of the other things that I got heavily involved with is Kundalini Yoga. Now, Kundalini Yoga is the most satanic yoga that you can possibly find out there. It's basically, the philosophy is that there is a dormant spiritual serpent at the base of the spine, and you will go through a process of what they call the Kundalini awakening. In the Kundalini awakening, it's said that the Kundalini serpent will then climb up your spine and go through the chakra system until it reaches the pineal gland and the crown chakra, where you will then experience what's called God realization. So as the serpent climbs and reaches the top, and the third eye is called the eye of wisdom, it will then convince you that you are a god, because the final step in yoga is God realization, which is to realize that you are God and that everything is God. Now, I do want to point out that in Genesis of the Bible, the serpent said to Eve that if we would eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge and wisdom, that we would become gods. This is the same spiritual deception that we find in Kundalini Yoga. We awaken within ourselves at the base of our spine a spiritual serpent that will then climb, and through the third eye, the apple of wisdom, receive enlightenment, ascension, God realization. But this isn't true. This is like the deepest spiritual deception that a human being could ever bring about onto himself. So this is what happened to me. I went through what's called the Kundalini awakening. Now, not everyone goes through it the same way. I actually had some very devastating symptoms, and you can do your research on this. It's called Kundalini. If you Google Kundalini dangers, you're going to see that a lot of people experience physical, mental, and spiritual symptoms. I would be sitting there and getting vivid dreams and visions, and my stomach was in knots all the time, and I was having physiological pain, and I thought this was all part of the process, because if you read the spiritual text, they say, oh no, this is part of it, don't worry about it. Now, the reason that you're experiencing this is because you're opening yourself up to the demonic spirits. The Kundalini serpent is essentially a demonic spirit. It is Lucifer within yourself that you are now activating, and he is getting possession of your mind and your body and soul. Alright, come on, people. It's a serpent at the base of your spine. Do you want to be waking up the snake that's going to make you think you're a god? This is absolutely satanic, and we shouldn't have anything to do with this, or Kundalini awakening.
It is estimated that there are 10,000 yoga teachers in the United States who teach between 4 and 5 million students a week. Man, that's a lot of people they're reaching. Yoga is a program that involves conscious stretching, deliberate movements, controlled breathing, and relaxation exercises. Its purpose is to develop strength, flexibility, balance, body alignment, body awareness, muscular balance, calmness, and controlled breathing. Yoga originated from a school of thought in the Hindu religion which suggests that postures can isolate the soul from the body and the mind. Just what I want to do. In the Western world, yoga is used mainly as a form of exercise. Yoga comes from, and that's the carrot. Oh, it's just exercise. No, it's a lot more than exercise. You're getting the package deal. Sorry. I mean, I'm sorry. I do, like, if I go and if I'm going to work out or do something like that, yes, I do stretch before, but I don't get into any yoga postures or any controlled breathing or recite some mantra or get my Hindu prayer beads out. Yeah, I don't do any of that. None of that. I don't have a problem with stretching, okay? But the problem is that this is a package deal, okay? Don't even call it yoga at all. If you're just going to stretch, okay, that's one thing. But if you get into the realm of yoga, where you get into the postures, and you get into the breathing, and you get into the meditative state, now you've crossed over the line. By calling itself science, yoga, which at its very heart is Hinduism, has within the last 30 years become an integral part of Western society, where it is taught in nearly every YMCA or YWCA, in clubs, in public schools, in industry, and many churches. Dressed in Western clothes, yoga has gained acceptance in medicine, psychology, education, and religion under such euphemisms as centering or relaxation therapy, especially now when you have all of the people that are under so much, quote, stress. We'll have it's some outlet for stress. That's all it is. You know, it seems harmless enough. It's also incorporated into self-hypnosis and creative visualization. Yoga is designed to lead the realization of one's true godhood through an inward meditative journey that finally locates the ultimate source of everything within the human psyche. She says, quote, "There's a common misconception in the West that Hatha Yoga, one of about 10 forms of yoga, that supposedly leads to self-realization, is merely a neutral form of exercise, a soothing and effective alternative for those abhorring jogging and calisthenics. However, Hatha Yoga is one of the 6 recognized systems of Orthodox Hinduism, one of the 6 recognized systems of this religion, and at its roots is religious and mystical. It is also one of the most difficult and potentially spiritually dangerous forms of yoga. The term Hatha is derived from the verb hath, which means to oppress. What the practice of Hatha Yoga is designed to do is suppress the flow of psychic energies through the psychic passages on either side of the spinal column, thereby forcing the serpent power or the Kundalini force to rise through the central psychic channel in the spine and up and down through the chakras. Now, Westerners mistakenly believe that one can practice Hatha Yoga apart from the philosophical and religious beliefs that undergird it. This is an absolute false belief. You cannot separate the exercise from the philosophy. The movements themselves become a form of meditation. The continued practice of the exercises will, whether you intend it or not, influence you toward an Eastern mystical perspective. This is what it's meant to do. There is, by definition, no such thing as neutral yoga. That was a quote from Like Lambs to the Slaughter, page 93 through 95. Other types of yoga. Now, again, I've said this before, but this is like the satanic Baskin-Robbins ice cream. You know, a flavor to please even the most discerning palate. Okay, so this is what we're going to be talking about. You got all these different flavors of yoga. I had no idea there was this many kinds of yoga you could do. But there's something here, you know, to please every bit of self-centered, you know, recesses of the mind.
Kundalini can be awakened in different ways, through intense yogic practices lasting a lifetime, or through Diksha, the direct transmission of spiritual energy by an awakened being. Of these, Diksha is the most effortless and certainly the most beautiful way to awakening. For an open receiver, a moment of Diksha can do more than a lifetime of spiritual effort.
If you are going to have a Kundalini awakening, the best way to have it is going to see a guru. And the guru himself, what he'll do is, as I'm showing you on the screen, he's going to touch your forehead. This is called Shaktipat. And when it's practiced, he will transfer his spiritual energy into you. And a lot of people will then fall down. They're going to shake. Some bark like animals. Some laugh uncontrollably. These are the spiritual manifestations of the Kundalini spirit. And brothers and sisters, we need to be careful.
The first instance of Kundalini awakening is always a pure gift from the spiritual master.
The Kundalini awakening that I get in front of Swamiji has been amazing, and I cannot describe it in words.
This is a subject that I have, again, a lot of experience with, as my mom has participated in this ever since I've been a small child. So I've grown up in a household that actively promoted yoga. My mom even got this one lady so involved that she started her own studio and now has traveled all over the world, going to all of the masters and to all the various parts of the world, India, China, Japan, and now, you know, she's got all these certifications and degrees and these types of things, and you can't even talk to her. She's so far out there. Because of all the demonic infestation that she has, yet she doesn't see it. She thinks what she's doing is a good thing. She thinks that it's exercise and meditation and a stress relief and these types, all the classic examples that you hear. Now, my mom's unsaved, and so is my dad, so they don't have any type of Christian mindset to be able to judge these particular issues.
If you do notice, when you're going to go to a yoga center, there's going to be statues of Buddha. I've been to yoga centers where there's tarot cards. There's all sorts of occult spiritual things all over the place and symbols. Brothers and sisters, we shouldn't be in these things, and we shouldn't be there. For those people out there who are yoga teachers, I know this is very, very hard to get, and you need to understand that you are spiritually blinded. You have awakened the serpent, and he's a deceiver.
Yoga instructors say that they have received a handful of complaints from people who believe yoga is intertwined with the mysticism and occult. Yes, it's only a handful, because there's very few Christians that even care about the information that I'm telling you today. They could care less. Doesn't matter.
I love Jesus Christ, and I think that's one of the reasons why he came to me, is because I already have that impression in my mind. Experience Jesus came because I love Jesus, right? And I correlate divinity with Jesus. I mean, now I correlate divinity with many different beings, if you will. But that's because, you know, I'm open to it. You know, not because I'm betraying Jesus.
Physical positions in yoga come right out of the Hindu scriptures. They are designed to put one into a state of consciousness where you imagine that you are God. Therefore, Christians who think they're getting relaxation and or exercise are really getting Hinduism. They think they're getting science, but they're getting religion. And they're getting devils. They're getting a nice big load of devils imparted into them. It is mislabeled and it's dangerous.
You know, that's a religious thing, which I'm not religious. And I actually never was religious. I was born this way. I was always open-minded. I've always loved Jesus. I was born into a Catholic family, but I never believed in the church, what they were saying. You know, it's like, it was very hard for me to believe that we're born sinners, you know, or that we need to, that we might go to hell if we do something wrong. I didn't buy it. You know, from a very young age, and I still don't buy it, obviously. But I still love Jesus. You know, I wasn't a churchgoer, although I sang in the choir or whatever.
As I said, there's a great falling away, and this is due to the fact that we're not going to endure sound doctrine. And sound doctrine specifically states that we are to test the spirits. And when we see these type of manifestations coming up in our churches, we should be really worried about these things, and we should look into them. I'm not saying that every single time that these things are happening that God isn't doing something, but here's the thing. I speak to some brothers and sisters who go to churches and there's these type of manifestations, and they'll tell me, well, Mario, you know, I felt such an amazing feeling of love. How could it not be God? Well, when I had my Kundalini awakening, there was a feeling of love, an emotional high that I experienced. I also would fall on the ground and laugh and all these things. I've experienced these Kundalini experiences, and it was so deceiving that in that moment, there's no way you could have convinced me that it wasn't God.
You know, I like the feeling. I like, you know, the good feeling that you get when people get together in love. But I don't like all of the dogmatic rules, you know, of of religions. I just don't believe in it. You know, for me, religion separates. It separates people rather than uniting them.
The goal of yoga is self-realization, to look deeply within what ought to be the temple of the only true God, and there to discover the alleged true self or higher self and declare self to be God. Nothing could be more religious than that. True. And it flies in the face of Bible-believing Christianity and the Word of God. Yet with straight faces, all the yogis insist that practicing yoga will not change anyone's religious beliefs. Every yoga teacher is in effect a Hindu or a Buddhist missionary, even though he or she may wear a cross and insist that Jesus was a great yogi. Oh, I got this the letter from the guy last week on the martial arts, the Mr. 10th degree black belt and 5-time inducted in the Hall of Fame and bragging. Yeah, he told me they gave him this thing when he left, I guess, the martial arts system, and they referred to Jesus as the great sensei, like the great sensei in the sky. Now, you see sensei, they'll say they bow to sensei, it's like their master type of deal. Yeah, that's how they refer. Well, you know, they say here, insist that Jesus was a great yogi and protest that yoga is not a religion, but science. See, they're very liberal and forgiving to these New Age principles when they incorporate them into the schools and every aspect of our lives. But Christianity, on the other hand, is totally rejected. Yoga is clearly a New Age concept, is deeply religious and pantheistic in its origin, and is widely practiced and supported by New Age proponents. The New Age movement denies the reality of sin, total depravity, and believes that man is generally good and is actually divine. Remember, this is an attainment of your God self. They teach that there is a God within us, and we are to harness that and develop it through meditation and other metaphysical techniques. Teach us that the only thing needed to enlightenment, the only thing people need is enlightenment regarding their own divinity. In other words, if we don't know, we need to know about it so we can cultivate our own divinity.
I don't understand the whole concept of religion. For me, it's all one and the same because I've actually experienced the oneness, where things kind of evaporated, right? You kind of like, yeah, there is power in the mind. There is power in the consciousness. And so you can create whatever you like, whatever you want.
These things like contemplative spirituality, labyrinth, yoga, all of which is preparing the way for something much more darker and sinister. It's paving the way for the Antichrist and the one world religion to rise. This is the goal. Satan is trying to condition the world, and particularly the church, which is really his only threat on this earth, at least. He's trying to condition and leaven the world to such an extent where the Antichrist is ready to make his arrival, to rise to power. The history is riddled with professing Christians who, for whatever reason, turned their backs on Jesus Christ, became apostates, and worked overtime to destroy Christianity. So a lot of people that have got into these things at one time were self-professed Christians. They get into this stuff like yoga, contemplative Christianity, all these other things that go along with this that we've done many reports on. And all of a sudden, you know, they start falling away. They get a totally different view of the Bible.
My life after that experience is like a sci-fi movie. You know, Kundalini is an energy. It's, you know, they call it the serpent because the energy goes up like this, right? It has nothing to do with, you know, the quote-unquote devil in the Bible, you know, the snake, the devil. Like, it's has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing. But something's happening every single day. You're like, what the heck am I?
Shiva was one of Hinduism's 3 most powerful gods, also known as the Destroyer. Shiva really, from what I've seen, is the most powerful god of Hinduism. He is called the Yogeshwari, or the Lord of Yoga. Did you know Shiva was called that? Because my mom talks about Shiva. She'll bring that up. I'll say, oh, yeah, Shiva, the god of destruction. Oh, well, that's not what we're taught. Well, Mom, it's well known in the Hindu hierarchy that Shiva is the god of destruction. He has a daughter named Kali. Kali is the god of death, goddess of death. She has 6 arms. 2 of them have heads. They have human severed heads and then plates to catch the blood underneath them. The 2 lower arms have the plates that catch the blood. The 2 arms in the middle have the heads, and the 2 arms up top have like swords so they can kill you.
Careful, Zach. There could be dinosaurs.
Zach, what is that?
Run, Zach.
What is it? Is it T-Rex? Is it? Are you scared?
Snake resting in that area, but you can awaken that energy, and then that energy is going to rise through the central channel, cleansing each of the
Flooding us
chakras.
with superhuman energy, retracing our mental blueprint, wiping out our most obstinate karmic patterns, and catapulting us to a whole new level of existence. By awakening the consciousness of each individual, Kundalini opens the doors for a global revolution of consciousness.
Those experiencing the Kundalini awakening, Kundalini rising phenomena experience what are called Kundalini Kriyas. I would notice my body making involuntary movements and jerks and twitches, usually when I was laying down or in meditation. Usually not during the day when I'm up doing things. But I do know that the Kriyas can happen at any time, and for many people they do. But the first one and most predominant one is in the neck. It resembles, like if you were going to snap someone's neck, that's what the movement resembles. It's a very quick, whip-like movement that I cannot reproduce consciously or voluntarily. So it's just a small movement in one direction and a quick whip in the other. And I get that one a lot. The new one that has started for me, this one's bigger. This is more indicative of perhaps a more standard Kundalini Kriya. It's larger in size, it is full body, and it resembles being punched in the gut. These do not hurt, by the way. There is no pain involved in any of this. They can be obnoxious and annoying because they, of course, keep you awake when they happen. But for instance, 3 nights ago, I was kept awake with this one for hours on end. And it's simply a doubling over at the middle and a flying up of all of my limbs, of my arms and legs, like you would imagine might happen if you hit someone in a gut. Boom, and it keeps me awakened up. It'll seem like just when you're resting and beginning to fall back to sleep, finding a place of rest, boom, you'll get another one. And I giggle, and I hope you do too. If we start taking these too seriously and getting caught up in discomfort and pain, it's only going to take the energy longer to clear these blockages. For now, I choose to be a passive rag doll at the disposal of the Kundalini electrical currents. And I'm happy for the Kriyas. If there's a blockage there, I want the energy to work through the blockage so that the energy can free flow. I've experienced the free flow of the energy, and it's beyond anything that I could say to you at the moment. I'm not feeling altogether poetic, but it is just, it's what we're supposed to feel like. It's what the human physical body and energy system is and what it's supposed to feel like. Love. Bliss. Absolute peace, absolute joy, absolute beauty. Any minute now. I would wake up in the night to find my hands placed on me in certain positions. Very often it would be straight forward and back like this on top of each of my hip creases, which is not a position, by the way, that one can maintain normally while asleep, because the musculature would normally have to be used to hold your hands like this. So the Kundalini energy would move me into yoga poses. This does feel just like a person moving you or adjusting you in a yoga pose. The experience, you are not moving your own body. I know I am not moving my own body. My body is being moved. It's an involuntary movement on my part. Another energy is doing this.
Get that leg over here. This is not in your... Whoa, there we go. Okay, now, are you comfortable? Yeah, nearly there. Let's see. Who we got here? You hate the voice. Yeah, I hate the voice. What's wrong with it? I don't like the accent. I don't like the tone. I don't like the intonation, the way you make me list things with a hand gesture. It's a cliche. Ow! You flinched before I hit you. It was almost like she knew what was coming.
But this confusion is not the circumstance for those who place their faith in Jesus Christ. For consider that our faith has its terms laid down as a covenant with God. God's dealings with man has always been in the form of a covenant, so that man did not have to guess or assume when faced with things confounding to the natural understanding. We have thousands of years through which God spoke promises to the patriarchs, and spoke both promises and warnings through the prophets of a wonderful happening that was about to occur, when God would reveal his covenant to man. Many hundreds of years before the appearing of Jesus Christ, Isaiah prophesies, "Thus saith the Lord, keep ye judgment, and do justice, for my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed." The righteousness of God was revealed in the coming of Christ, and that righteousness continues to be revealed each time God personally reveals himself to the man through his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. When God called Abraham to wander alone for a purpose extrinsic to this world, well, he continuously spoke to him in terms of covenant. For instance, Genesis 17:7, "And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee." And then we learn through the writings of Paul that the eternal covenant was that made with just one person, the only seed of Abraham, capable of standing in covenant with God, he who came from God, his own Son. And so Paul writes, "Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ." God does not require that men slug about in the dark with spirits against whom they can have no assurance of their intentions. Jesus Christ stands in covenant relationship with God and man. His blood provided the only answer that God will accept, and his life provides the holiness of God, the revelation of God's righteousness communicated to us via his Spirit, and his resurrection that becomes our resurrection by faith. And yet, men would seem to prefer to blindly grope in dark places and prone themselves to influences that they know not what.
When it reaches the crown chakra, you may experience a state of bliss, deep meditation, and even enlightenment. So this can be achieved through different methods, and in my case, what happened is that it was spontaneous. So I didn't know what it was, I didn't plan for it, I didn't have anyone who could guide me or knew what it was. So that was a little more difficult. In this case, for you, you have so much information nowadays in the internet. There is so many people that is awakening at this moment. So I'm sure it is going to be a blissful experience for you. In my case, in 1997, I had a near-death experience. So this was the catalyst for a spiritual awakening. And a year later, I felt a strong calling for exploring something beyond the physical. So I started meditating with a group, and this group was from India, and the name of the group had something related to yoga, but we didn't practice yoga, just meditation. One day in this meditation, I had an ecstasy experience, and I felt that I was one with everything. I was in the void, and suddenly an explosion of light, like if I was one with all the stars. And it was just amazing. So I thought, wow, this of the meditation is just amazing, it works. But I didn't know what was coming after that. So when I arrived home, my body started doing movements because it was moving with the Kundalini energy. I didn't know what was Kundalini. I didn't know that it would move my body. So it was very strange, and my friends were like, what's happening to you? And that was part of the problem, that we didn't have any information. Then also I would start seeing light and energy. And also I had the experience of perceiving people much stronger than before. So instead to just feel them through my five senses, I would feel them through their energy, meaning that before I could see them, I would feel that they were approaching, but I didn't know what it was. So I just felt a surge of energy in my body and becoming stronger and stronger, and suddenly they would appear and I would say, oh, that was what was happening. And then somebody maybe was coming behind me to tap my shoulder, and I would feel this surge of energy and I didn't know what it was, and suddenly they would tap my shoulder, and it was really, really overwhelming for me. At night, when I was going to sleep, I would go out of body. And once again, I didn't know what out of body was. So I thought I was dying, and I was so scared. So I tried to avoid going to bed. And then another thing is that when I was also falling asleep, I would go into other dimensions, and I would interact with other entities, but sometimes there were situations that I didn't like, and I didn't know what to do. So slowly, I actually learned how to have kind of lucid dreaming and decide what I was doing and say, wake up. So I would come back to full awareness and to this reality and dimension. There was this day that I was at home and I couldn't sleep because I was afraid to fall asleep. So in that space in which I was almost asleep, I connected with a being from Lyra. Actually, I didn't know it was from Lyra until later that I was told. So what happened is that I saw coming through the window this light that turned into a being, and it was just like pure fire, like the sun, a being like from the sun. And this being touched my feet and released all my stress and fear, and it just felt so beautiful. And that experience was so precious to me, and I will always remember it. So that was the best that happened at that time.
Hello, my name is Tara Springett. I'm a fully qualified Buddhist teacher and Kundalini therapist. And today I would like to talk to you about the treatment of Kundalini syndrome. I myself have been in the Kundalini process for almost 30 years. I've had lots of highs and lows, but overall the highs have far outweighed the lows. And in my own process, I have understood a lot about what Kundalini is and how one can help others to overcome all the problems. I'm also using my background as a psychotherapist and Buddhist teacher to help my clients, and I am now working with clients who suffer from Kundalini syndrome for several years. A lot of energy healing, for example, acupuncture, homeopathy, Reiki, faith healing, laying on of hands and so forth, all of that is very, very good. But these methods have not been invented for people who are in the Kundalini process. So unfortunately, I've noticed that that a lot of these treatments backfire for people who are in the Kundalini process and who have symptoms from energy. And so that's the first thing that I would like to tell you. What would not be a good idea to do. I teach you directly how you can manage, influence and change your own energies in your own mind and in your own body. Now, in order for that to happen, it is very important that we move away from some sort of materialistic outlook on the Kundalini. The Kundalini is not a physical or biological process, even though it might appear that way, because surely we feel stuff happening in our physical body. In my own process, the way I work with people, I always focus on the psychological issues first, because whatever energy problems we have, if it is pulsation or weird energy going up and down our spine, or churning energy somewhere in the body, or enlarged emotions that feel like physical pain, all of that is due to our own emotional and psychological and spiritual misperceptions and inner conflicts. So it's like we have different conflicts in us, different impulses in us, and these impulses there are in conflict sometimes with each other, and that leads to these kind of weird energy symptoms. And so if we now deal with these inner conflicts, with these unresolved issues that we have from our unconscious mind, what we will find is that the physical symptoms usually subside. I use for that is higher consciousness healing, which uses pure love as a healing agent. And I always say pure love is the master healer in the universe. So there's no superior healing approach to any of our problems than to penetrate these problems with pure love. And that some sort of illness, or is some kind of foreign energy that somehow has intruded in our body mind. It's not like that at all. The Kundalini is really just an amplified version of ourselves, and that is true even if we experience paranormal experiences, you know, seeing things, having visions, and experiencing ghosts and all sorts of stuff like that. Really what we are experiencing here is the manifestation of something that comes from our own unconscious mind and manifests in this sometimes frightening way. But once we understand this dynamic, then these experiences will soon stop. Which is described in my book, The 5-Minute Miracle.
And some of you asked me, how is my life after that? Well, even though in the beginning it was challenging because I didn't know what was happening, I didn't have information, after that I started meeting people who were in the same path, and also I found my mentors, and that helped a lot. So my life now is much more beautiful. It was an expansion in awareness, and this is what will happen for you as well with this process. This mudra, which is the prayer position, and our thumbs are going to be touching our sternum. And that is going to help us with centeredness. We're going to feel more centered. We're going to also be chanting the mantra Om Namo Gurudev Namo. And this means calling on the divine wisdom that lies within. You are so calling on that wisdom that you already have, that is within you. So that is going to help you through this process.
I just wanted to talk to you specifically about the body and some of the things we might experience in the awakening process. For me, I've had a lot of extreme muscular tensions, which actually started to get a lot better when I stopped resisting. Given that I've had quite a lot of really big physical experiences with like just strong energies, and it's just knowing, is there anything I should do practically, like eating or something differently? Or
because in all awakenings, what it is, it's realignment of energy, and that energy, the way that energy expresses itself through the body while it pushes or squeezes rather out, squeezes out of the body that which inhibits the natural state of this body to embody consciousness on that level where human, let's say, being is designed to embody consciousness, right? So it's preparing the body, literally preparing the body on energetic level to be more capable to transmit high frequencies, as simple as that, high forms of energy, high states of consciousness. Because, like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, when he was asked by Rick Archer, by the way, who was the interviewee, so why don't you just, Rick was a chickie, he was young, and when they were doing the TM teaching training course in Mallorca, he said, Maharishi, why don't you just awaken us? And Maharishi said, well, then I would need 6 strong men to hold you down. When a tremendous, so it's energy, when a tremendous energy will be allowed, it will either burn this physiology in this nervous system and the whole network of nerve tissues if it's not
that's what I'm frightened
prepared.
of.
Well, you should not be frightened, but it's a legitimate
Seems like
question.
there's such a lot of energy that wants to come, and I have some energy moving where I just experience intense vibrations, and I guess what I want as well is reassurance that there's nothing I'm doing wrong necessarily that's going to damage me, but you're suggesting I should do some more movement
Until there was no control whatsoever. It's like you do yoga until yoga does you, You do meditation until meditation is spontaneous at all times, 24/7. You cannot come out of meditation even if you want to, okay? So this is, in a way, but I don't want to say that's the only way. That's the only, but of course, this is very, let's say, proven and safe way, because that when consciousness allows to move in the body as movement, because body is still, body is allowed that. And to confirm you that there's nothing wrong with you and nothing to be afraid is because it's not that something happening to you. Let's put it in a different qualitative context. It's God moves through you. That's what awakening really is. It's God that moves through you. It's that energy, that divine energy that is moving through you. That divine energy, that's what creates that movement, that internal movement, that what you experience in sleep, in waking state. And yes, rightfully in sleep, because that's when there's like this repose, isn't it? When the body relaxes, all the vibrations come and they intensify. And this is why certain traditions emphasize that sittings are important. I remember when Shakti was especially active, if I didn't have enough sitting, then I would not be able to sleep at all. Because as soon as the body rests, as soon as the body is still, then when the work will start, it wants to express itself.
It wants to cry really loud.
Yeah.
I never feel like this is my place to do
Yeah, I used to go to Primrose Hill and scream at night. Scream, because if I'll scream in my apartment, it'll freak out my neighbors. It's to come and like scream, because I want you to scream,
Yeah.
But it's socially not allowed.
Yeah.
But the kids we talked earlier about, they scream. So you have to allow yourself that, allow yourself that, allow it to happen, allow it to, to come out, it wants to come out. And the way it will come out is always beautiful, no matter the way, which way it comes out, because that's that freedom that wants to experience itself, that openness, that complete expansion. It wants to cry, yes, it wants to cry, it wants to like, it wants to just, Don't hold it. It wants to come out, isn't it? It wants to come out. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Was one of Hinduism's three most powerful gods, also known as the Destroyer. Shiva really, from what I've seen, is the most powerful god of Hinduism. He is called the Yogeshwari, or the Lord of Yoga. Did you know Shiva was called that? Because my mom talks about Shiva. She'll bring that up. I'll say, oh, yeah, Shiva, the god of destruction. Oh, well, that's not what we're taught. Well, Mom, it's well known in the Hindu hierarchy that Shiva's the god of destruction. He has a daughter named Kali. Kali is the god of death, goddess of death. She has 6 arms. 2 of them have heads. They have human severed heads and then plates to catch the blood underneath them. The 2 lower arms have the plates that catch the blood. The 2 arms in the middle have the heads, and the 2 arms up top have like swords so they can kill you.
You know, kriyas, what it means is that it's a movement. The word kriya is action, movement. So it's like the way we've contracted to this contracted state of consciousness through kriyas, in the same way we expand. So it's a reversal. That process is just in reverse. And the reason why I've asked you to specify what kind of breath, what kind of, you called it a breath of fire. Keep falling into it. No resistance, no, like, just don't do anything that is like, don't try that, because the Kundalini is intelligence itself. When kriyas happens, this is the supreme intelligence at work. Sooner we start to introduce certain kind of like, okay, I'm meant to direct that process, okay, I'm going to raise my consciousness, I'm going to send Kundalini through the roof. Don't do that. I've tried and it doesn't work. So that, so to speak, nothing to worry about.
Bonfire, take 1.
When it wakes up within us, and when it begins to wake up, it's almost like this force that's trying to rise up our spine. It can cause incredible havoc within our body, within our nervous system, within our energetics. It's something that I struggled with for a long time. I experienced a good 8+ years of intense back pain, incredible back pain to the point of me crying pretty much every day and having to lay flat on my back and being grumpy a lot because I was under intense stress and pain throughout my being. Open in those centers and embrace the very pain that was within there, whether it's mental pain, emotional pain, unconscious resistance or whatever. As I embraced it, those centers began to open and the energy began to move throughout me. And when it first moved, it was so intense that I had convulsions, seizures, incredible neurological disorders, loss of memory, couldn't sleep. I became so sensitive I couldn't be touched a lot of the time. It was a really crazy experience. At first it felt like there was a river that was trying to rage through a garden hose. So it was kind of painful at first, and then that kind of garden hose got blown to pieces, and then the energy just started moving. And so I had a good 2 or 3 years where I had a lot of neurological problems. It was quite difficult. Having trouble walking, having trouble, like my hands working, just having like so much energy just raging through my body. It felt incredibly blissful. It felt like the most incredible bliss I've ever experienced. And I had experience of huge expanded like cosmic consciousness and just raging energy just like going through my body, and it felt totally amazing. And then at some point it kind of settled down and integrated, and sometimes it gets amped up a little bit still. But, you know, Kundalini, it's a big thing. If I did any kind of Kundalini yoga and breath of fire, any of that kind of stuff, that created a total nightmare for me. So I'd encourage you to completely stay away from Kundalini yoga, even though it's supposed to help get those energies flowing. When, to me, it's like, I wouldn't ever want to mess with this force in any way. You just want to be gentle with it and just open to it, because as soon as it begins to open, it tends to just want to just like, you know, push through. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a divine force, but it, you know, it can be very dangerous and can be very confusing for a lot of people. But the Kundalini force in general can be quite powerful and create intense havoc for us. You know, some people get stuck like this, or you know, their eyes roll back in their head, and it can be really blissful. And a lot of people try to get into it because, you know, they want to have the feelings of bliss, and they read books about it and get all excited about it. But it's really dangerous to push it in any way. So I would never recommend pushing it, and just let it. I laugh. Let it rage through your body, and hopefully it can be a total nightmare. And you know, it's funny because like when it was happening with me, people would see me and, you know, my body would be shaking or trembling, and I mean, I was experiencing absolute bliss. But when, you know, friends and family or whatever, I even went and saw doctors and neurologists, all kinds of stuff. People would look at me and they'd turn pale because they were like, oh my God, there's something really wrong with this guy, you know, and nobody could figure it out. I knew what it was. I just had all the classic symptoms, you know, just like overwhelming energy, couldn't sleep, you know, just like energy, it was, and the thing about it, the energy was just complete bliss. Kundalini energy, it's just an amazing force that it's best left alone. And if it does start running, to open to it and to not do any kind of weird breaths to incite it. Because it's like throwing gasoline on a raging bonfire. Yeah, so.
Initiation sequence. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The introverted variety is more difficult because he has intuitions as to the subjective factor, namely the inner world. Yeah. And of course that is now very difficult to understand because what he sees are most uncommon things, and he doesn't like to talk of them. Yeah. If he's not a fool. Because he would spoil his own game by telling what he sees, because people won't understand it. Yeah. For instance, once I had a patient, a young woman, about 27 or 8, and her first words were, when I had seated her, she said, "You know, doctor, I come to you because I have a snake in my abdomen. I said, what? Yes, a snake, a black snake, coiled up right in the bottom of my abdomen. And I must have made a rather bewildered face at her. And she said, you know, I don't mean it literally, but I should say it was a snake. It was a snake. She had foretold me, I come 10 times, and then it's all right. I said, how do you know? Oh, I got a hunch, you see. Yeah. And really, about the 5th or 6th hour, she said, Doctor, I must tell you, the snake has risen. It is now about here. Hunch. And then, on the 10th day, I said, now, this is our last hour. And do you feel cured? And she said, beaming, she said, you know, this morning, it came up and came out of my mouth, and the head was golden. For instance, they come into the presence of somebody they don't know, and suddenly they have inner images. And those inner images give them a more or less complete information about the psychology of the partner. Yes. Yes. You know, that is, but the case can also happen that they come into the presence of somebody whom they don't know at all, not from Adam, and they know an important piece out of the biography of that person. Yes, yes. And are not aware of it, and tell the story. Yes. And then the fat is in the fire. I told you that case of that intuitive girl, who suddenly came out with the statement that she had a black snake in the bed. Well, now, that is a collective symbol. That is not an individual fantasy. That is a collective fantasy. That is well known in India. For instance, she has nothing to do with India, but we have it too. It was generally human. But it's entirely unknown. So that I, even in the first moment, thought, perhaps she's crazy. But she was only highly intuitive. It is in India known. It is the basis of a whole philosophical system of Tantrism. This is Kundalini. Kundalini serpent. I see. You see? And that is something known to some few specialists. Generally, it's not known that we have a serpent in the abdomen. But that is a collective, you see, that is a collective dream, or a collective fantasy.
Good for Eve. I love to be descended from Eve. The first human being was a woman who stood up on her 2 feet and took the fruit and said, hey, if this is the tree of knowledge, I'm going to eat it because I'm a human being, and forget it, Jehovah. Forget it. Go back to, jump in your squad car and go back to headquarters, Jehovah.
Once a clinical psychologist and Harvard professor. Now, by his own description, a visionary prophet. Others have called him the man most responsible for the North American crisis over LSD.
In order to use your head, you have to go out of your mind. You have to go out of all of the static, symbolic ways in which you think. Don't take LSD unless you're very well prepared, unless you're specifically prepared to go out of your mind. Don't take it unless you have someone that's very experienced with you to guide you through it. And don't take it unless you are ready to have your perspective on yourself and life dramatically change, because you're going to be a different person, and you should be ready to face this possibility.
You've sung here a rhapsody to the virtues of LSD, which, it seems to me, would cause anybody who desires to be virtuous, assuming that he is impressed by what you say, to rush out and try to find this stuff. You say that it increases your experience, it increases your sense of love, it increases your sense of harmony, it increases your sense of perception, that it is to the modern world what the books were to the discoverer of books, that it is to the immediate world what the discoverer of magic was, and so on and so forth. But you refuse to say, let's all go out and take a trip together. Now, I don't think it's lack of conviction on your part. I think it's a technique. Whether it's a conscious technique or something that was vouchsafed to you on one of your trips, I don't know. But I'm interested in that. Why don't you just say everybody ought to take LSD? Or is this a legal problem?
Well, the key to our religion, Bill, and to our politics and to our economics is individual freedom.
What would have happened if Saint Augustine had taken this stuff? The answer is that he probably never would have been conscious to write those travails, which are the most beautiful monuments to human...
Exactly.
Yeah.
In St. Augustine, you will get one of the best descriptions of an LSD experience which has ever been written. It's right down there, the 5 levels of consciousness. St. Augustine took a trip. The trip has always been difficult. It's the trip of death and rebirth.
Dr. Harold Abramson of New York. He has published 45 research papers on lysergic acid.
LSD has found its greatest dangers, I believe, in the hands of those who are not qualified to use it, namely those who administer it to themselves.
But who is in charge of the person's consciousness, himself or his doctor?
I don't think they should be free to choose from a medical point of view, because LSD is a new drug. I think the dangers of using LSD and the confusion that comes to people under LSD and the pseudo-hallucination and the paranoid effects, the depersonalization.
In his natural habitat, the prophet preaches. Timothy Leary in a Saturday morning session of words and silence.
Become aware of this incessant beat of all life in the universe, pulsing into every corner of your body. The ecstasy of this center is union of your flow and pulse in the river of all life. And this is the classic experience of unity which mystics have been writing about 1,000 years.
It's like dying and being reborn by breathing exercises, by various body postures. These all tend to take you out of the particular role or situation you were involved in and focus your consciousness inside. It relieves you of your personality or ego and gets you to a higher level of awareness.
Taking LSD is really a form of yoga, but there are many other forms of yoga. And the point, very briefly, of practicing any form of yoga is to try to maintain an expanded level of consciousness. That is, you take LSD, you go out, and you come back. And then what? And then the immediate next question is, can you maintain it? Can you maintain even a fraction of that expanded level of awareness for any length of time? And that's where the methods, so-called methods of yoga, come in.
Dr. Ralph Metzner, a psychopharmacologist and Timothy Leary's principal assistant.
We are neurologically and biochemically in touch with thousands of generations that came before us. And the record of these previous evolutionary attempts are there. And LSD is simply the modern yoga made possible by advances in science, which have produced these incredible chemicals which we call psychedelic drugs.
The Marsh Chapel experiment was designed by a graduate student under Leary's supervision. It investigated whether psilocybin, taken in a religious setting, could induce experiences comparable to those described by the great mystics. Randall Larko was one of 10 theology students who took the psilocybin.
I had a real struggle with the chemical, and at one point I thought, in fact, I had died and I was in hell. I began saying the Bible verse, "For God so loves the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." And I kept repeating that over and over again, and then I came to the awareness that this wasn't helping me at all.
Larko fled from the chapel, with Leary following. Outside, his terror evaporated.
It was a glorious sunny day, and I remember seeing an elderly couple walking down the sidewalk hand in hand, and that was the most profound and beautiful experience to me. This was an image of people who indeed loved one another and had lived their lives together. Everything in the world just seemed to glow inwardly with life. Everything was alive, and I don't mean just living things, but even inanimate things. They just lived. And I was seeing things like I had never seen them before.
Leary steered Larko back into the chapel.
I do remember lying down on the floor. Leary lay right next to me, almost as though we were lovers. I can remember the smell of his hair, being extremely physically close, and then feeling my hand run down his body, touching him. What he was doing was giving me human contact again.
9 of the 10 theology students reported that they had indeed experienced something like a mystical revelation.
I would say, yeah, it did change my life. The experience that day demonstrated to me the reality of God's presence in all the world and in all experience. If our eyes are opened and we are able to perceive and take that in. And by eyes, I mean our spiritual inner awarenesses.
The experiment had demonstrated that psychedelics could indeed open the doors of perception.
The LSD trip is best understood as a religious pilgrimage. The LSD kick is a religious ecstasy. Even the LSD psychosis or the LSD panic is nothing short of a spiritual crisis.
They recruited just about every Swami and Hindu that they could find to testify.
I salute the goddess within you. I salute the God within you.
We came to an agreement. There was a plea bargain, and that was that we would let Tim completely off the hook, but he would clear out of Dutchess County, which is what the good burghers of Dutchess County wanted. And Tim then went to California, for which he told me later on he was eternally grateful that I sent him out there. And I told him yes, and the people of California have never forgiven me since.
In 1995, he learned he had cancer.
Think for yourself. Think for yourself. I can't believe I'm standing here with a man that John Lennon sung about.
Leary appeared undaunted by the prospect of his own death. In accordance with his last request, Leary's ashes were launched into space. He is now orbiting the Earth every 96 minutes.
But does not heightened self-awareness constitute the ordinary means to human progress as such?
It may. It isn't necessarily so. You don't need to know to know. You have to be able to use what you know.
Which is to say what?
Knowledge can be self-destructive, too.
Good for Eve. I love to be descended from Eve. The first human being was a woman who stood up on her 2 feet and took the fruit and said, hey, if this is the tree of knowledge, I'm going to eat it because I'm a human being. And forget it, Jehovah. Forget it. Go back to, jump in your squad car and go back to headquarters, Jehovah.
when everything falls into place like that and it's a solution to questions you're asking, if you're going to say no to all the solutions the universe offers you to your questions, you're just going to have to live with the question. Mm-hmm. Doing a 3-day weekend this time. It's going to be fairly intense. And if we can catch me after that, I think you will notice, other than the haircut I'm planning to get, you will notice a contrast in my manner, in the way I try to explain things, in my presence. I think it'll be interesting to see if it comes across.
I made some decent money from the sport, and I was able to kick back for a little bit. The nature of reality and what life's all about and everything, is a big question we should all be asking. What's it pretty much all, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I realized that the nature of reality and whatever that's projected to us through religion, through education, through the media and everything, a lot of it's just bullshit. It's false, and the real reality is nothing like most people think. Every ancient culture has a plant that they used in ceremonies, and they used to communicate, if you like, with the spirit world. There's a world beyond what we can see and touch here. This is nothing. This is just a minute slice. There's a lot more reality, and there's a way to get there, and there's a way to transport yourself there. So every culture, whether it be mushrooms, ayahuasca, there's tons of plants that ancient cultures use in order to do this. Pure DMT powder, and smoke that, and this is just a direct route straight to the spirit world. And
entire experience that I'm about to tell you took place on a very high dose of DMT and on 1 tab of LSD. So I was talking to my friend at his house, and I was asking him if he was going to partake in smoking DMT with me. And he himself was frightened too, because he had an experience which he felt was like, he said it felt like there was a presence in the room possessing him. Now, I think he's a little religious, so that definitely plays into him talking about devil possession and all that kind of shit, which I'm not really vibing.
It's just like, it almost felt like a mothering sort of sexy, but it goes right through you.
A mothering sexy.
It was nurturing. It wasn't something to be scared of or whatever. But it goes right in you. Everything. It's like it is you. It's part of you. There's no separation. You can't separate yourself from whatever is going on here, and you try to, and it just. But it cycles. There's this like fucking infinite number that's. Every way you look, it's just more and more and more and more and more. And when you, as it goes through your mouth, your eyes, everything, it's just like, there's no stopping. It's like it's everywhere. It just cycles. The same pattern. Just like, but it almost, there was like cat-like reptiles, yeah, the spider thing, yeah, all that's going on for sure. I mean, you could call it whatever you want to associate it with. There's cats in there for some fucking reason. I don't know.
DMT is pretty freaking crazy, so this isn't even like I can't even match it. Like I can't fucking explain this shit. Like and on these arms, these like little lever things, these are what are called the machine elves, as everyone talks about. I'm pretty sure. Welcome! Like hooray! You're here! Like this couldn't be a better moment. Like you are here. Like you're with us again. You know. 2 hyper. Neon Jekyll alien fucking creatures with their hats attached to each other. There was 2 of them, I remember it. And they were swinging me around and just dancing with me. It was the most beautiful dance ever. And it's all telepathy or whatever. It talks to you. I know it sounds crazy, but this fucking drug talks to you. And the basic things it was saying, these 2 Jekyll creatures that were spinning around with their hats tied together, they were saying, I am you and you are me. Like, you are the trip and we are you. Like, I didn't even have any memories of who I was. I didn't know my name or anything. That's all gone. Your ego fucking sheds.
I took about 70 milligrams of DMT, lay down on the sofa, shut my eyes, and then manifested into the middle of the room was this humanoid alien creature. probably about 6 foot tall, and it was just standing in the middle of the room, and it had a big elongated head. It looked like a number 7 standing up, had arms and legs, and it was covered in eyeballs all down its arms, all along its head, all over its body and legs. It was just full of eyeballs, and it was standing in the middle of the room, and it was like glitching. It was like moving around like this, and then it like looks at me. I'm lying on the sofa, and it sort of starts staring at me, and it starts glitching towards me like this, and then it comes right up close.
I feel my body start to get paralyzed because a high DMT dose will completely knock you unconscious. So I threw my hands down on the mirror just to prop my body up. So I was barely up, and what happened next still has me shaking. Like, even telling the story, I'm getting nervous because it's just remarkable what happened. Usually people don't remember DMT experiences, and since I was conscious the whole time, I remember every last part of this experience.
It was pretty grotesque looking. It wasn't very pretty at all. But like, I didn't get any hostile feelings from it or anything. It was like inquisitive, just looking at me, like trying to work out what I was.
It's just like a passageway with a big blind over it, and that blind, or a curtain, whatever you want to call it, a sheet, has a Hindu god on it facing you, right? So she took me there,
and it was just like, this is the dance of a lifetime. This is the moment you've been waiting for. I am you, and you are me, and I will always be with you. It was letting me know that it's always gonna be there, even though I can't see it every day. It's always gonna be there. I can't see it, but you know, when you fell off your kid, when you were a bike, it's okay. That thing's there for you in the end. When your prom date dumped you and you cried all night, it's okay. Because the magic Jokel creatures are there for you in the end. This thing has your back in the end. When you broke your arm, it's okay. They're there. When you crash your car and you hate your job, it's okay. The elves will be there for you, man. Like, when you...
So what happens if it doesn't go, it decides to stay?
I blast through all the dimensions through this membrane. It's like this, in this sphere, like inside this torus sphere. And as soon as I cross this membrane, there's no more duality. Everything's one. Like, there's no more separation. Like, I still have, I'm still myself, but at the same time, I'm part of this collective consciousness, greeted by like these like 6 or 7 giant spheres that come up to me and are like telling me things through not really language, but just feelings and knowings and vision. They're like creating.
The most intense it got was I swore there was an alien like right in front of me, just looking at me, and like I tried to like just focus on something else and I couldn't. I was just stuck staring at this alien, and I even said, like, I'm looking at an alien right now, like there's a freaking alien in front of me. That was kind of interesting, and it was weird. It was like connected to me, like with I don't know, it's really strange, like physically connected, like almost like when images are just warped to where they're connected. I don't know.
Coming right up to me, right? The cat was coming right up to me and smiling and trying to lick me and shit like that. I was like, okay.
You were sure giggling first off.
Oh, the feeling was fucking heaven. Oh, the feeling that of happiness is joy from a cell. I know what that feeling is, and that's when you meditate and stuff. I feel the same way. Like, I get that rush.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of laughing it's cellular. It goes right fucking from head to toe of orgasmic sunshine. That's all I can say about that. It's like everything's bubbles and just pops. It's just like pop, pop, pop.
Any
this
aliens?
Is my DMT. What's that?
Any aliens?
Well, that would be the cat.
The cat.
And the shit like that, right? And sure, there was some reptiles and there was
music.
Yeah, the buzzing. Fuck yeah. And the music, yeah, there was some shit going on there, but there was patterns, and if I wanted to stay on the patterns, I could stay on the patterns. But if I wanted to let go, I could go deeper. Oh yeah, you could go more. There's definitely more levels
Layers.
there. Oh yeah.
And there's
tons of levels.
reptiles.
Sure, I got the feeling of earth and being buried. And having things where, like I was saying, I think at the beginning, where you can't get away from it. It consumes you.
Like underwater feeling?
Yeah, like through the mouth, through the eyes, every orifice is filled. Which
like you feel like you're not in a body anymore.
No.
You're really the tapestry of what you're looking at.
And it cycles, and it's just like everywhere, and it's racing like a video game.
Yeah.
If you use this with a spiritual intent and to gain knowledge, you can really connect to the source in other dimensions.
It's to help us all connect. It's to help bring the light of things like ayahuasca to the world. You know, it's to help us elevate the consciousness of humanity. You know, and
so I'm watching my reflection in the mirror, and all of a sudden my face changes into a more attractive version of me. I looked like I had really tan skin, and every part of my face looked really symmetrical, like my twisted, broken nose from being, too many fights as a kid, twisted out, and I looked great. I remember thinking, wow, I look like I've got an attractive twin. And then before long, my face started to wiggle around the edges, and then it started to shrink. So keep in mind, I'm looking at my own reflection, and I'm aware that it's my reflection. The reflection of the rest of the room stayed the same. Like, I could still see the elevators in part of the mirror. Everything else was there. The only thing that was changing was my face.
I just remember the cube was back, and I'm getting lowered. And then another little layer thing, like an arm comes back out. And on this arm was like 3 of the machine elves. And they were like, goodbye. Like they were shaking in a way to say goodbye. I knew what it meant. The way I was saying goodbye, I was crying. Like, I never had an experience this powerful in my life. And it was the best experience of my life. It was great.
we painted our faces with the crushed juice of this strange Amazonian berry. We painted our faces red. What I asked to have painted on my face was a circle, a perfect circle on my forehead, with a point in the middle of it. The reason I asked for that is there's a movie called Watchmen, and the protagonist is a guy called Dr. Manhattan. He becomes like a Superman in the movie, like a god. He is disassembled in a nuclear accident, and then he reassembles himself somehow, and he draws that own thing on his forehead, and that becomes his symbol. And I don't know why, but the whole day I just kept thinking about him, and I just kept thinking I need to have this symbol on my forehead. Pretty insane, right? And I took the full cup, and we started the ceremony, and then it was a descent into madness. It became a descent into absolute madness.
I'm really scared right now. I feel like I'm about to go on the craziest ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I'm honestly super scared right now. And I told her, I was like, I'm really scared. And she's like, don't be, like, you're going to be okay. You're ready for it. I know it. Just trust me. And I was like, all right, I trust you. I mean, we're friends. You know what you're talking about. I know that.
One of the guys next to me, who strangely enough was the only person who hadn't been vetted for this trip by Suzanne, he became possessed by some entity, and he started rolling around on the floor wailing, and then he started shouting, "I am God, I am God," like shouting, screaming, and then cursing, like swearing the most vile curses and profanities and demonic stuff from his soul I've ever heard. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know who it was. I was so under the depths of the medicine, I couldn't figure anything out. I just knew I was terrified. I could sense the evil and the negative energy that was radiating off him.
Same trip has happened maybe 4 or 5 times, and it's always been exactly the same. And the same scenario, the same spirit beings in there and everything, and ultimately the same conclusion. It was basically I get blasted into hyperspace, and I get to see the creation of the universe and it's absolutely beautiful.
That looked like a beehive or bee honeycomb, and they were moving around very fluidly together, and they formed objects in front of me. And one thing that they formed in front of me was a man. He was made of gold, and he was laying on his back with his arms crossed. I thought he was a pharaoh just because of what he was wearing, but everything about him was made of solid gold, including his clothing. And he was laying there, and as I looked at him, he slowly morphed into what looked like our Milky Way galaxy. It was remarkable because it was in high definition and in 3D.
Mayan color scheme going on. Like totally. It was a Mayan kind of like the corn gradient.
What do you mean by corn?
Like if you ever look at corn in the fall, when it goes all red and all the different colors.
Like an autumn kind of tone and theme to it?
And it was all doing that everywhere. It was fucking orgasmic. That was a high for sure.
And somehow I got the strength to stumble out of the Maloka. I don't know how I got out of there, but I got out. And at that point, I lost sight of what I was again. I started thrashing around in the dirt, Brian. Thrashing around in the dirt like a possessed animal. I don't know what was going on. It was... To this day, any way I can put it, that was the death of my ego. That was the death of what I was and the birth of what I am. When we did our debriefing ceremony, as we did every day, when everyone would sit in a circle and talk about what happened to them, I just kept saying, I was born in the jungle because I was born in that jungle.
And then there was also this entity, and I don't know what it was, but it could have been something like Mother Earth, you know, Mary. It was like among these themes, like something very powerful and very intelligent. Mary, whatever, female god.
And it starts shrinking, and it turns into this gray silverish color, and it keeps wiggling like it's getting tugged on the edges, and it shrinks into a little ball. My head was a ball, and the ball is spinning around, and it looks like it's getting ripped apart on all the edges. And again, I know I'm looking in a mirror. And at this point, my jaw drops. I'm just like, my head has become a ball of clay.
In my vision, I saw an array of geometric patterns, brightly colored, just going all over my vision, just swarming my field of vision. I'm like, whoa, what the heck is going on? This is so crazy. And I'm like, just calm down, relax, you know, and just enjoy it, you know. And so I felt my body pretty much disappeared. I was just like in this new dimension, right? And like this crazy, like these crazy geometric patterns just flowing through my vision. And maybe about like 2 minutes in or something, the geometric patterns just stopped. And I was just in a black. And this, I want to say like a spirit or like an entity just kind of like traveled into my vision like this. And it was composed of like many different colors, like rainbow colors, and I saw it, but more than anything I felt it, you know. And it felt like this just like divine presence of like a woman, like a very powerful, and I was honestly terrified. I was like, okay, oh my god, oh my god.
He started banging on this gong, and it unleashed some kind of energies, it dredged things up from the pits of our souls. People started retching, puking like that, like puking, like the most demonic, evil sounds you have ever heard in your entire life. Then it started to show me things about my life. I was working in my third eye chakra. It was having to work way harder because my heart chakra wasn't working.
How did you even like find out about it?
I think about 20 years ago, I was in Brazil and I met somebody in Copacabana, and Trudy and I, my wife, we got in the back of his car and we mysteriously led out of Rio through the favelas into the jungle. There's a big church, and they handed out this brew, and Trudy and I looked at each other and we're going to... Everybody's drinking it, so we did. I drank it in one. And then, after about 40 minutes, there's something coursing through every cell in my body, like an intelligence searching everything. And I am wired to the entire cosmos.
My head, Brian, I couldn't make this up.
You gotta drop it for us, man.
There was a point where I became a snake.
Okay.
I literally became a snake. My tongue started moving around in my mouth, doing the craziest things. And my vision, it became a strange, like almost like a fisheye lens field of vision. And my head started bobbing and my whole spine started moving in this strange serpent-like manner.
Wow.
And I realized this is what a snake is like. This is what it's like to move as a snake through the jungle. You know,
how is he going to cope when he finds out? Is he going to be alright this time? And then all of a sudden, it's like the light switch on, and I remember that I created the universe, and it's a shock, to say the least. But I remember, and there's not an ounce of me that doesn't believe it. It's just absolutely believe it. I created the universe, and I remember, and I remember how I did it. I've just seen how it happened. Absolutely convinced. And then all these like family of spirits around me, they're like saying, "Oh, is he gonna really remember this time? Because you know we've been here so many times before, and he keeps forgetting. We need him to remember." And then when I sort of acknowledge, in the DMT realm, I'm going, yeah, I did. I created the universe, and as soon as I accept it for the truth, I can see this father spirit starts laughing, and he's laughing his bollocks off.
And I see this ship show up, like a UFO looking ship show up, and this lady was in it with blonde hair, like long blonde flowing hair, and her energy was like really calm, and she just said, "Don't worry, we're raising your vibration."
And as soon as we get to the paintball field, that's when it all went away. I became God. So as I thought, you know, it was so convincing.
There was a girl I met on this trip. Her name is Sarah. We had become close. There was some strange attraction to us, some magnetic attraction. The moment I laid eyes on her, I felt something. In the third ceremony, she was also the girl who was rubbing my heart and who kickstarted my heart again, my heart chakra. In that third ceremony, there was a point where she became a queen, an Egyptian queen. The name that keeps coming back to me is Queen Semiramis or Isis, like this. And I saw her sitting there, and she was the most beautiful goddess-like Egyptian queen of a man. And that is what ayahuasca is. It is facing your own shadow. That is what Luke Skywalker went through in that tree when he had to slay his own father. That is what I went through in that jungle.
And it was himself, ultimately.
It was himself, his own shadow, because that's what, it's a journey into your own shadow.
My entire 22 years of living, I've led up to this moment. I became God. Like, I graduated life, and there was no reason to worry about anything anymore.
It's colors, it's numbers, it's geometric shapes, and what you realize is that everything is connected. The thing that I got is everything is one, and one is everything. Everything's connected, and we're all part of it, you know, and we're all... We feel like individuals, but we're all part of the collective just experiencing itself, you know.
Later, about 3 or 4 days, I went down to San Diego, and when I got there, I heard a knock at the door. And when I answered it, it was Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I told them I wasn't really interested in talking, and so they happened to have a Bible, they opened it up to give me some literature, and they just happened to open it to a page that had a picture of the man that I saw in my ayahuasca trip. Well, that flipped me on my head. I couldn't believe it. It was like, wow, what the hell is going on here? It turns out this golden man represents world government, I believe. How and what did it mean? Did it mean we were part of a universal power?
And then all of a sudden, this geometric face explodes out of the ball, like a chin forms, and then the forehead pops out. And I kid you not, it looked exactly like PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 graphics. I could see the polygons in it. The face, it almost smiled at me. Like, I don't know if I was interpreting it as smiling or if it was my own reflection, but it looked like this digital face smiles at me, and then it goes boom, and it starts shifting really fast through 1,000 faces, like old people, young people, children, women, fat people, skinny people, and it's going like again, a character select screen in a video game, like you're choosing your fighter in Street Fighter, right? And you know, the little face changes as you go to the next fighter.
Then it got very scary. Then I became a kind of a creature with only mind. Like, I had no body, I had no spirit, I was just mind. I was stuck in this mental realm. I didn't know what I was or who I was. I just knew I wasn't human. And I was stuck in this strange mental realm. And I remember I was trying to call up memories of being human, memories of my life, memories of what it was. Like, it wasn't. Then I started doing yoga. I started doing weird yoga stretches to try and remember what a body was and what a body meant. And
it's just shifting too fast for me to focus on any one face. And then it starts shifting through animals, lions, tigers, alligators. And again, this is my reflection. It's got my shoulders and it's my body with this head of like a lion at one point. And it just keeps shifting. And then it changes back to a human, and it looks like my chin starts getting like stretched out. It's like jiggling. It looks like me again, and then it starts jiggling until my chin drops, and I've got this huge double chin, and I look like this huge fat guy.
And I realize for the first time, this is the only genuine religious experience I've ever had. It is communion. It's direct access to the Godhead, whatever you think that is. I have no idea what it is, but there is definitely an intelligence, a higher intelligence at work in you during this experience.
I felt this crazy presence, and basically the presence was communicating with me, but not through words. It was communicating with me, you know, verbally, and it showed me, I mean, not verbally, like telepathically, you know, and it showed me that, you know, it told me everything is okay. No matter what, you know, is happening, you are loved beyond words.
Don't worry. And this noise kept getting louder and louder and louder and louder till it started to hurt my brain. And I was kind of like fighting it, like, oh shit. I mean, this isn't the first 10 seconds of my trip. Like, a lady's talking to me. So, okay. Like, I felt the top of my head warm up. Like, I felt like my crown chakra, and that's all I can explain it as. Like your third eye and your crown chakra. I felt the warmness. I felt everything happening.
And they walk around the room doing a closing ceremony, which involves blowing tobacco on your crown chakra, on your head, and saying a sort of a shamanic prayer to seal you off from negative energies once you leave the temple, because the temple is a protected space.
Okay.
And you're very open during an ayahuasca ceremony, and now he has to reseal you.
Okay.
And there's all these giant beings, and they're like half human, half animal, but they're huge, and they're all working. They're like busy doing something, and here I am, like floating by, just in awe. Like, what is this place? And it was more than 3 dimensions. It was, I can't even explain it. Like, it was the patterns and the colors. Like, it was impossible. So
before you can go out, there was a point where people started. I mean, John started babbling incoherently, speaking in French, making weird sounds. There was a point where people were wailing. which we weren't supposed to do. We were told off the next day. Another thing that happened, one of the people who was doing the ceremony, he had entered into a hell realm of some sort. He had also been lost in his mind, but in an even darker place than I had been. And he was wailing. He was just wailing, "Oh God, oh God," wailing like that for about 20 minutes. Okay. And the energy became very dark. So there was a thick negative energy in that room.
And they kind of look at me and they're like, "What's he doing here?"
And like I said, it's not like this happened on just one DMT experience. This happened on easily 3, 4, maybe even 5 times. It's always exactly the same. I see the creation of the universe, and then I remember that I did it, and then this father spirit just starts laughing at me, and then I'm left.
I know my brother, he's not a bad man. I know that he is in touch with God in his own way. That Christian framework is the framework through which he sees God. I called them all and I tried to impart this to them. I tried to start telling them the story. I wasn't trying to rub it in their face. They were asking me. I was trying to tell them the story. And when I did, he started saying, he was saying, "You were not the king of Egypt. It was all just a demon." And I couldn't talk to him about it. I realized I'm not interested in his opinion of ayahuasca. This is my spiritual journey. I really believe that ayahuasca is one of the right hands of God.
And anyway, this huge red jaguar being, like this male energy red jaguar, like shows up all in my face, and I was like, "Oh fuck," because it was a pretty aggressive energy, and he's like, "I'm diminishing your ego," and I was like, "What?" And like, he got close, and like I was like, all right, and he kind of backed off, and I guess my ego got big again, and then he came closer and closer and closer till I was like, "Oh shit!" And then I was somewhere else, and then I kind of faded back into reality.
How am I going to tell people that I was a snake, dude? How am I going to tell people that I've seen aliens and had a plant spirit connect with me? And
just wanted to address an issue that's popped up in the comments of quite a few of my videos, in which I'm getting told I'm being deceived by demons and that only Jesus can save me. I am God experiencing himself as John, and I'm not sure, I've never understood how Christians can sort of believe that they're separate from God. Are they referring to the fact that I believe that I created the universe? Well, if I'm wrong, what does it matter? Is any loving God going to punish me for thinking that?
So I loaded it up again, ripped it again, and same thing, the noise, everything was bright white, but this time it didn't hurt. It just felt completely normal. And I blast off, and I'm in this other dimension. This guy here, and he's got like some sort of headdress on. It was almost like Egyptian almost, but not quite. And then at times he'd like move, and he'd have like fucking 12 arms and shit, like almost like those Hindu gods that you see in books or whatnot. It was a trip, and then it'd go back to like a normal human form, and he was like folding over the dimensions and just showing me impossible shit, and just showing me that he runs and he controls this whole dimension, like wherever this was, and he's busy like doing work on the other dimensions. And
is this actually me I'm seeing, or am I getting like a reflection of like another me? Like maybe in a different alternate reality, I'm a fat guy, and this is what I look like when I look in the mirror. So I'm seeing a reflection of another version of myself. Or, you know, maybe I'm just tripping out on the drug. Who knows, right? But these are what's going through my head. These are the thoughts that are going through my head. And then before I can process this, it turns back into my normal face, the more attractive me. and then this face smiles at me. And what happened next is the most remarkable part of this story that I wish I could make sense of, and that I'm going to get a lot of hisses for.
Basically, I want to tell you about the reasons why I stopped taking DMT. I haven't used DMT in several years now. The trips I kept taking with DMT they became the same all the time, being told I create the universe. And each time I was being told it, got the impression these entities were getting more and more frustrated, as in like, how many times do you need to be told before you sort of take heed of what we're saying? You know, we've told you before, you've created the universe. And
I was spoken to by, if you want, by God, but it wasn't. It was me as well. You know, it was like the higher me talking to me. And
what I saw was what I consider to be one collective human spirit.
All these faces just start showing me these things, and then they started jumping into me, and at that moment I was just filled with like just the most amazing beauty. I can't even explain it. Like I was absolute one. I was completely everything. I could remember everything that ever happened in the entire universe.
All of a sudden this feminine presence comes in. It's like this pink energy, and she shows up, and she's like almost kind of pissed, and she's reviewing my life too, and they're both like, they know everything about me.
They were saying, no, you're staying here, you're with us, you're not going anywhere, you're always here, you're always with us, we're always going to be waiting. And it was so beautiful. I was filled with just,
and
oh my
then
God.
they're like, all right, time's running out, and everything all merges together like into a liquid sphere, and it merges into me, and not only do I see, but I feel everything is connected, everything is one, like everything is connected, and it's pure love, it's one love. And then it backed up, and there was nothing else around it but the void, and that's all there was. On the very highest dimension, everything's one and everything's love. And not only did I see it, but I felt it. And unless you've had that experience, like, that was the source. That's where I came from. That's where we all came from and go back to.
I worked with a shaman I did a cleanse.
These are crazy.
Did a really eye-opening experience of ayahuasca. It was really intense, and I saw my whole life in front of me. And I had to let go of past things that I was trying to hold on to that were dark in my life. And physically, I felt it when I had this experience. Like, I saw myself die. It was insane. I saw myself being born. And that, I feel different ever since that. Just being okay with, you know, the wreckage of my past.
Thousands and thousands of lifetimes. Like, at one point, she was holding a baby, and then at another point, she was holding a cat. And then, like, they died and, like, rotted away into skeletons, and plants would grow up, and there'd be like another lifetime, and they'd die, and plants, it was like life, death, life, death. Like, I saw like literally thousands of incarnations, like thousands of years of her incarnations and the lessons she's learned, and losing family, and just, you know, the heartache she's experienced. And she's, the whole time she's like in my face, like trying to like tell me something, like intensely, like, but very loving, but very, very intense. And
you know, and what this presence told me is, no matter what happens, whether you do good or bad, you are loved no matter what, and you're simply taken care of. And that there's more to life than this that we see here. There's more to life than this, and just believe that and have faith in that, and know that I love you. I love you all beyond comprehension.
My jaw dropped, okay, it went like this, in the reflection, and all of these sharp teeth sprouted out of my gums, like I'm talking like sharp, jagged teeth, and it kind of, my face looked like this, if I can like recreate it. And all of a sudden these scales started exploding out of my face, my skin literally turned green, and what was looking back at me was, I kid you not, a reptile. I don't know if it looked like a snake face or the traditional reptilian alien face. I mean, Often people smoke DMT and they claim that they had contact with reptilian beings or insect beings or elf beings, but seeing reptilians is very common on DMT.
And immediately I just got filled with this feeling of bliss, and I broke out into tears, and I just couldn't stop holding it back because I just felt like, oh my God, like I
literally saw my reflection as a reptile. Does this mean that I'm a reptile? Well, maybe I am the reptilian overlord. Who knows, right? But that's what I looked like. And I stayed like this propped on the mirror staring at this reptile face for a good few seconds. Like, after all the transformations, it decided, whatever the it or the reflection was, it decided to stay a reptile permanently. And I remember looking at it, and I had this wave come over me, and I was just like, I felt like everything made sense all of a sudden. You know, like, a lot of people say when they smoke DMT, they felt like they went home. I got that vibe, but it was like, I just understood. I remember thinking, oh, yeah, that makes so much sense, right? It makes so much sense. And my legs gave out, dropped the pipe, and I collapsed. I was like...
They showed me these two people who were enemies in life, and they, like, one had killed another anyway. And once they died and came to the other side, it was pure forgiveness. It was pure love. Like, they were laughing and talking about it, and it was pure forgiveness. And I was like, well, what about the guy who killed him? What happens to him? And they said, well, he has to cross the membrane and go back and incarnate and work it out in one way or another. Like, it's karma. It's going to balance out. And everyone just understands that. So, and then they showed...
It was a beautiful moment. Like, I was convinced, and like when I finally was convinced, I was like, I'm God.
And I immediately started laughing like a fucking lunatic, like full maniac laughter going on. I was like, and yeah, but it wasn't like I was interpreting this. Like, I was full on watching it, as if right now you're watching me and I all of a sudden turn into an alien, and you're like, that's what it looked like was happening to me in my own reflection. Like, just, it's crazy.
Ron, you just spent a weekend doing ayahuasca. Your thoughts on that?
I have never done any other hard drugs of any sort other than, I drink a little alcohol, and I have tried some marijuana. Neither of them compare at all. This doesn't just mess up your perception of reality. You literally go behind the curtain. You feel, you sense, and occasionally see symbols of the operation of how everything's getting put together, how choices are made, how you're affecting what you see and feel and hear, and what other people are doing. And it's very, very, very convincing. I mean, if your brain can make up that kind of connections and see those associations and play out those relationships when you're stoned, we should all hit ourselves in the head and we'll be geniuses. Because if your brain works that much better when it's working improperly, then we'd be all better off to be lobotomized, and when we'd solve the world's problems in a week, because literally it makes too much sense. The deeper you go in. Hello? It's been 4 weeks after ayahuasca, the 3-day ceremony I attended and participated in, and I thought I'd give you a quick update. I knew I was God. I was God. I was at least a partner with God, part of the whole scheme of things when I was on ayahuasca, and for a couple of days afterwards. A week or so afterwards, I remembered that I was God and part of God and working with God. And now, a month out, I think a lot about being God. I'm aware that I knew I was God, but it's not the same.
I was God. I was at least a partner with God, part of the whole scheme of things. I remembered that I was God and part of God and working with God. And now, a month out, I think a lot about being God.
It was
I'm
horrific.
aware that
We had all
I
seen
knew I
some
was God.
incredible things that just.
And this thing started to work its way into my soul and my brain and my psyche and just connected with me. And I just went with it.